I'm Toni, and today we are going to make a very simple apron. We're not just going to make an apron though. I'm going to teach you all of the concepts and the ideas behind making an apron so that you can make design choices of your own and you can make your own unique apron just for yourself. So some of the things we're going to go over today is we're going to talk about the reversible aspect nature of it, about why you would want to do two fabrics instead of just one. We're going to talk about the tubes that you need for the tie up here and the ties back here. And of course, we're going to talk about pockets. We're going to talk about how to do a simple pocket that you can do after you make your apron. Just a very simple way of getting it in there, whether you want pockets on one side or both sides if you want to make your apron reversible. Either way, we're going to talk about all of the things that go into this. Hopefully we'll have some fun and hopefully you'll learn something. So let's get to it. All right, let's talk materials. The first thing that you need, of course, is 1 yard each of the two fabrics. Now, I mentioned that it's important that you have two fabrics, and I'll show you why later. But the most important thing is if you use a single fabric, then you not only have a thinner apron that is going to not last as long because it's just that single layer, but then you have to finish off these edges. Whether it is you fold the edges under and then sew them in place, you then have to tack on the top strap and the side straps even better, and you may have to finish this off with a binding around. It's honestly a lot easier and better if you use two fabrics to reinforce this, have an easy way to put those straps and that top strap in, and just to make it look a lot nicer, then it becomes reversible, which is cool. So two fabrics, 1 yard apiece. So I've got 1 yard of each of these. You also need, of course, your rotary cutter and straight edge, unless you're using scissors to cut your fabrics, which is perfectly okay. You don't have to use a rotary cutter if you prefer scissors in this case. You do need a sewing machine, thread, and needles. Now, with an apron, it does not make a difference which fabric you use as long as it is a sturdy fabric. So cotton, polyester, you could use jeans, whatever you want to use. I would not advise flannel or fleece, and I would not advise any kind of gauzy type material. So I'm going to be using 100% cotton. That is the most well used for aprons and the easiest to use. So step number 1, take your fabric, your 1 yard of fabric, and we're going to trim this from 36 inches down to 29 and a half inches in width. So 29 and a half inches. So I started, this is 1 yard from side to side, folding this over, and I'm 29 and a half. Now, all of these math numbers will be down below in the comments. So don't feel like you have to memorize these numbers. You can look down below for these at any time. So 29 and a half. You're going to do this for both of them. So both of the yards of fabric, you're going to trim the width down to 29 and a half. Now, this is going to be the length of your apron. So if you are making an apron for a really tall person or a really short person, you can adjust this accordingly. So you can make this longer or you can make this shorter. So this is going to be the actual length of the apron, okay? Then, oh, and of course these are the extras that I've cut from the off the side. You should have it about, if you're going from my math and you're doing this 29 and a half, you should have about 6.5 to 7 inches left in here. So we're going to set those aside. Now we're going to trim the width of the apron. So how we're going to do that is I'm going to open up my fabric just the one time, keep this folded. See how it's still folded from selvage to selvage? So keep the fold right there, and we're going to just fold this down to make this easier. And remember, I said this is the width of the apron. So if you need a wider or a thinner apron, this is where you can do that. You can make it wider, you can make it shorter. Okay, now and then I'm going to cut this. You know what? I'm just going to do it the one-time fold. Let's just fold this over one time to make it easier. And we're going to cut this 14.5 inches. Now, because I'm cutting this here 14.5 inches, it means it's going to be 29 inches total in length. Okay, so let's cut this 14.5 inches. And again, this is going, the measurements are down below. You do not need to remember them. So I'm going to take this extra bit right here and set this aside with the rest of my fabric here. And we're going to use these later on for straps and pockets. Now, if you are making a taller apron for somebody, then at that point, what you would want to do is maybe get another half a yard. So if you're planning on making an apron for a super tall person or someone that needs a wider apron, you may want to get 1.5 yards of each of the fabrics. All right, so let's cut this 14.5 inches in width. There we go. And set this fabric aside. Now, if your cuts are not perfect, that's okay. If they're a little wibbly wobbly, if you're not quite sure of a rotary cutter yet, that is perfectly okay. Because I'm going to show you later on how to make sure that this all kind of lines up in a better way. So now we have our fabrics cut. Let's get the main shape of the apron together. Now when I talk about the main shape of the apron, this is exactly what I mean. So you have this part here which goes over your top, and then this part here that goes down and around, and then you can tie around your waist. So this is the shape that we want to get with these fabrics. So I'm going to show you the easiest way that I have learned how to do that, and that is on the fold. So if we take this apron and we fold this over, this right here is exactly what these fabrics are, like this. So we're going to take this fabric and we're going to do this line right here along there. So how we're going to do that is get your marking pencil or chalk, whichever you use, and decide which of these fabrics is the best to write on with your marking pencil or chalk on the right side. So remember, this is the right side, this is the wrong side of fabric. So right side is the one with the design. If you have a batik, there is no right and wrong side. So whichever your marking pencil, so in this case I'm using chalk, so I'm going to use this one because it's darker. So I'm going to take this one and set it aside. So you only need to mark one of these. Now, there's a lot of apron patterns out there that have you make a template out of wax paper and then iron the wax paper down and then follow along that template. You can do that. That is perfectly okay to do that. I don't use those just because I freehand a lot of things. But if you're more comfortable using a template, you can totally use a wax paper to create a template doing this. So exactly what I'm doing right now, you can do on your wax paper. All right, so we're going to let me take my measurements. And again, these measurements will all be down below in the comments. So I'm going to measure from the fold. So everything comes from the fold. So from the fold, I'm going to measure 6.5 inches. Okay, and then I'm going to draw a little mark. This is going to be mark A. So as I'm talking with the different areas, this right here is going to be mark A. Then our mark B is going to be over here. So I can see my A is right there. B is going to be 10 inches down from the top. So at this top over here, all the way down, 10 inches, right there. Make your mark so that you can see it. Now, I realize that my marks are a little bit hard to see, so let me bring them close so you can see there's my mark A, and, oops, mark B. There is my mark B, right there on that yellow paw. So just making sure you can see it. Now, let's say if you mark the wrong one. Let's say if you go 10 inches here. You can just, you can get rid of your your marking pencil by erasing it. Chalk, of course, just rub it together and it gets rid of it and you can redo it. It's not a problem. All right, so we have our A, we have our B. Now our C is going to determine where over here we're going. So our C, we're actually going down here on the fold. I'm going down 6 inches. Okay, so 6 inches down, here is my mark C. And then from my mark C, making sure I line this up over here, I'm going to go across. Let's see, from mark C, I'm going 8 inches away and making a mark right there. Okay? So this is our mark D. So A, D, B. So you see how what's happening right here? I'm starting to get a curve. So let me show you my mark D. It's going to be out in the middle of nowhere. So now what I'm going to do is you can freehand, you can try to find a curve. I just connect them. So what you want to do is take mark A and come straight down and work your way over to mark D. Just like that. So you see I've gone from A down to D and stopped. Then I'm going to take D. Now my B is right over here. So I'm going to take my D and move it down over here to my mark B. Now you see how I have 2 different slopes. And in fact, let me make this a much darker line so that you can see what I have done. There we go. So there is my line all the way A to D to B. So you see how I have one slope here and then another slope there. And then that is going to be the shape of your apron. Now, if you decide that you want it more straight on here and then there, that is fine. Whatever you do, do not do a straight line to there and then a straight line to there, because then that is going to cause issues with the actual apron. Because remember, we want the apron to be this shape. We want it to have the nice curve flowing shape. If you do straight lines, it's going to be jagged. So make sure you do a nice curve as you're doing that. So now let's trim it. At this point, we want to make sure that both of our fabrics are the exact same. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this one and I'm going to lay this down. Now this is why I just mark one of the fabrics, but I do them both together because I cannot freehand the same exact line on both at the exact same time. This is why a lot of the different patterns tell you to make a template. But you know what? I honestly think templates are hard sometimes. But if it's easier for you, then make a template and then do it for this and then pick up the template and move it to the next one. It's almost just as easy to cut this. Now you can cut this with your rotary cutter freehand. You can also use scissors. Now in this case, I'm going to use scissors just because I find for the curve, it is easier to make these cuts and keep them the same. I find when I'm freehanding with a rotary cutter, it tends to slip a little bit more when I don't have a straight edge that I can go against. There we go. And there's our apron. And there's our line. Now you notice how I didn't cut the entire line. There's some cases where it's still right there. That's fine. If you go a little bit too much, a little bit too little, it's the basic curve that you care about. All right, so now let's go ahead and put these together. So what we're going to do is we're going to do right side to right side. So I'm going to iron out this crease right here in both of these fabrics, and then we'll come back and I'll show you how to do the basic sewing together of both of these. And there's the basic shape of the apron. Now, remember, with seam allowances, it's going to come in just a little bit more. So keep that in mind. If it looks a little bit too wide, that's perfectly okay, because we do have those seam allowances. But if it's too small, well, you may want to start over again, because if it's too small, there's nothing you can do about that. All right, so I'm going to switch my marking to a pencil instead of my chalk, because we're doing right sides to right sides. So I'm going to lay the top along the bottom. Let's see, let's lay right sides to right sides. And I'm going to put this whole thing together. And then I'm going to pin or clip all the way around. So let's pin or clip this. If you like to use the Wonder Clips, those are perfectly fine too. But make sure that you do these all the way around for your pins, just to hold it together. Because the next step, remember I said we're going to, if you're a little wonky, that's okay, because we're going to fix this in the next step. So I'm going to pin this all the way around, and then I will come back and show you how to fix if it's wonky. Okay, let's trim and fix our wonkiness. Now you may see there's a little bit of the fabric from the other side peeking through right here. But for the most part, this side looks pretty good. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to flip this over to the other side and check the other side. So what I'm looking for is the other fabric peeking through in large areas. So that all looks good. That looks good. Now over here, it looks like I have a touch right there that's peeking through. I can trim that if I like. You know what? Yes, I'm going to trim that. Normally, if it is less than 1/8 of an inch, you can leave it. It doesn't have to be perfect. But this looks to be about 1/8 of an inch. So I'm going to trim this. And let's trim this down. Is it the whole way down? Yep, it is the whole way down. Okay, so I'm going to turn this. Make sure not to trim the top fabric. And this will just make your sewing easier. Now, here's the issue with mine. Look at that. There's a lot. Now, if I were to sew this side without trimming it down, you know what happens? I don't catch this fabric and the seam is all wonky. So let's trim this. So again, I'm not cutting any of the top fabric. I'm just taking the bottom. Now remember, this is an apron that you are making that you can customize and change. The exact length doesn't make a difference. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be exact, a certain amount of length. Make it the length that you want, which is why I was showing you the different ways that you can cut it to make it wider or thinner or longer or shorter. There we go. Perfect. So now it is good all the way around. So now let's mark where we're going to sew. And this is important because what we're going to do is when we make our top tube here and our side tubes for the waist, we're going to tuck them in. So we're going to tuck our top two in here, and we're going to tuck our sides in right there. So because we're going to tuck them in and then sew them in place to secure them, that means we need to leave holes. So all of these, again, I've put down below the exact how many inches, which is 2 inches for these, and then 5 for the bottom. So let me show you what I mean. All right, so we're going to take 2 inches from each side here. So remember, we're putting in the top there and there. So let's measure 2 inches and draw a line. So there's my mark. Okay, let's measure 2 inches. And, whoops, that's 3 inches. So that is 2 inches there, and draw a line. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew from there to there. I'm going to back stitch here, come over here, back stitch there, and stop. And then I'm going to pick up sewing right from here, and then sew down all the way here. So I'm only leaving open right there, but I am going to start sewing there and work my way down. So then we got to leave the sides open. So I'm going to sew this all the way down, And then I'm not going to start sewing again until 2 inches from the end. Because remember, my waist is going to go right there for the tube. So, oops, sorry, I just pulled up a few of my pins. I'm just putting them back together again. So we're going to measure 2 inches and mark. Same thing with the other side. So I'm going to start sewing from my mark and then move down. So the same thing here. We're going to measure 2 inches and then mark. So that I'm going to start sewing from here and down. So I'll sew this here, but then I'm not going to sew this area here. We're leaving this open. Okay? Now, these little 2-inch openings are not enough to flip the whole thing inside out and pull it through. So we need to leave an opening in the bottom. So we need a wide enough opening in the bottom that we can flip the whole thing, and I'll show you how to do it. So our opening in the bottom should be about 5 inches. So this is how I like to mark it. Let's put our ruler down, and then we're going to mark 5 inches. So let's say here. Let's go here on the 3 and the 8. That is 5 inches. So the same thing. We're sewing this, stopping here, picking up back there, and then sewing that. So I will show you what I mean for the sewing. Let's go to the sewing machine. Okay, this is the top of my apron. So this is the very top, as you see with the curved slope here. So I'm going to start right here because remember, I'm starting at this first one. Now I'll be using a black thread to show you step by step. And whenever you start sewing, make sure you secure your thread. So I'm going to move forward 3 threads, back 3 stitches, and then forward again. And remember, do not sew over your pins. And this is why I pinned them the way that I did. So it's easy for me to just pull them out as I go. So I'm going to go all the way down, taking your pins out as you go. Don't sew over your pins. And then when I hit this other line down here, I'm going to stop. I'm going to go back 3 stitches, forward 3 stitches, and then stop it. So I'm going to completely take it away because remember, we need to leave this 2-inch area open for the top straps. Now for the side straps, remember I said we're leaving this open here. I'm going to start at the very end right here. Now it's going to be hard to go back and forth right here, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to show you this. What you want to do is use a fabric leader in order to start your sewing. So I have this scrap piece of fabric. I'm going to start my sewing. I'm going to move all the way out in order to make sure it's nice and clear. And then I'm going to start my sewing here. So I'm going to move forward 3 stitches, back 3 stitches. And then this is how you can secure this area in here right there. Let's take the pin out and then sewing down. Now, you may think that this is a curved sewing piece. It isn't. This is not considered curved sewing because we're not actually having something opened up here. This is something where this is the shape. We're going to flip it inside out for the right side to right side. So all you need to do is follow along this curve. Now, you may have noticed my 1/4-inch piecing foot with guide. This is a special foot that I suggest for a lot of my quilting projects that allows you to sew a perfect 1/4 inch every single time. And I just realized I forgot to mention, sew this with a 1/4 inch. So you're sewing with a 1/4 inch all the way down. And then once you get to the very end, don't sew off of here. Stop at the end here, back up 3 stitches, and then sew forward. And let's get my scrap fabric because we want to make sure that this actually sews all the way off. And then we're going to clear it. So you want to make sure that you sew all the way to the end, but going back and forth in order to secure that thread in. Then we have a mark here. This is the side apron. So you want to leave this open and start sewing at that mark. So let's take our pin out. Let's remove our scrap fabric. and start sewing at that line. Do not forget to go back and forth. We want to secure this in. Now the reason why we want to secure this in is we want to make sure whenever we flip this inside out, these stitches don't come undone. So it's super important that you secure that back and forth in order to make sure those stitches do not come undone. I know I said that twice because it's important. Do not skip that step. All right, now here's a trick. If you've never sewed something together around a corner, here's a trick to do it. You do not have to completely sew off. So I don't have to sew off this end and then sew the other end again. All you need to do is come down, stop about 1/4 inch from the end, and turn your fabric. And then we're going to start sewing this other way. Now you notice how that probably was a little bit more than 1/4 inch from the end? It's okay. As long as you're catching both of the fabrics together with at least 1/4 inch, you're perfectly fine. Now remember, this is the bottom of the apron. So this is where we're going to leave our 5 inches, our 5 inches open so that we can flip this inside out. There we are. So we're coming up to our line. I'm going to stop at the line. I'm going to go back 3 stitches. And then I'm going to go forward 3 stitches. And then let's clear this away. We're going to trim this. And I'm going to start sewing at the other line. So you see here, this is where my first line was, so I stopped sewing. We're going to come here, start here. So I'm going to put this right here, and I'm going to start sewing at that line. So forward 3 stitches, back 3 stitches, and then forward. Okay, so then go ahead and sew all the way down, hit the corner, go around. When you get to this line right here at your second side, stop there, and that's where I will pick up this video. Now remember, this is the second side. On this first side over here, this is, remember, where we have our one side apron that we did, and we left that, nope, oops, wrong side, there we go. I was like, that doesn't seem right. There we go. This is the other side where we kept this side part open for your side ties of your apron. That's what we're doing here on this other side. So what we need to do is leave this part open and start sewing here. But remember, we have to lock these stitches in place. So do it again. Put your scrap fabric in, sew your scrap fabric out so that there's a space, and start sewing here. Move forward 3 stitches. Go back 3 stitches, and then sew forward again. And you're going to sew down until you hit the top of the apron. Exact same thing we did on the other side. So I cleared away my scrap fabric. Even though this is a curve, it is fine. Just follow along with the curve. As you see, sometimes it's a little bit more, sometimes a little bit less. That is perfectly fine. Just keep going down, following the line of that curve until you hit the end. Now remember, with this end, this is where we started right here, so we're finished. All we have to do is go to the very end. Once I hit that end, go back 3 stitches. Now, if you don't have a button that allows you to go back 3 stitches, there's a wheel on the side of your machine that allows you to crank it and move it yourself. That is what some people do. That's what I'm doing right now, is you can go back 3 stitches, and then you can go forward 3 stitches. Now, once you hit the end, clear it, put your scrap fabric in, clear it right there, and then now it's cleared. Now, at this point, go around, and if you have any threads hanging from all of your stitches, go ahead and clean those up and trim those down. And then we're going to go back to the cutting table, and I will show you how to flip this and then do your tubes. Now, at this point, you should have everything done. So there is our apron like that. Check your seams. Make sure whenever you have this thread that it is 1/4 inch on both sides, that you catch both of the fabric. So at this point, inspect everything. Look at the front, turn it over, look at the back, Make sure everything is a 1/4 inch and that you've left holes open on each side for the ties and each side for the top. If you have gone a little bit wonky and you haven't cut all of the fabric, or the fabric shifted or something happened, it's fine. You don't have to cut out all of these stitches. Just redo it. Just redo your thread a little bit deeper in until you hit a 1/4 inch fabric from both sides. So it's perfectly okay. This is not a project where it has to be perfect. Just make it a little bit deeper to catch that. It's more important that you sew enough of the fabric so the seams aren't going to come undone than it is to get a perfect measurement of it. All right, so at this point, we're going to flip our apron inside out. You have a 5-inch opening at the bottom. This is where you put your hand in order to flip it. Now, if you have a really, really large hand, you may need to leave more of space at the bottom for your flipping. So you may need a 6-inch or 7-inch hole. I just find if you can get away with 5 inches, it's a lot easier to close it up afterwards. All right, so we're gonna flip this whole thing inside out. Now, take your fingers and poke out all these corners. So you have 2 corners on the bottom. If you don't have nails like I do that you can poke them out, you can take a tool such as this one and poke these corners out. Oh yeah, look at that nice sharp corner all the way. So you've got the other one down here. There we go. And let's poke this all the way. Beautiful. Now, make sure you don't do it hard enough to where you poke through the fabric. Be gentle with your poking. All right, now for the top, remember for these 2 sides, for the straps, it should be a hole. That should be fine. I have little hands, so I can fit 2 fingers in there. Make sure you can get at least 1 finger. It should be fine. So you've got your hole there, and then for your top, your 2 seams at your tops should also be holes. Once I can find, there they are. So poke it all the way out so that your fingers can come through. All right. Now at this point we're going to iron. So make sure you iron this. So take it. You want to iron all the way down. Now with these holes right here with this fabric, what you want to do is we're going to take this and we're going to tuck it in, and then we're going to hold it in place. So make sure that it's exactly what it looks like whenever you want to iron this. You can use clips, you can use pins. Now, if you have ironable pins, I know Clover makes some really great ironable pins. You can use those at this point, and then you can just iron right over it. I unfortunately don't have any, so I have to use my regular pins. But I'm just going to put that pin into place right there. Again, on this side, you see how the fabric is coming out? What you want to do is take it and tuck this in here so you don't see any of those seams. And then pull it out to where it is exactly what you want it to look like when it's sewn together. There we go, just like that. And then put a pin or clip in there. And we're going to do this for all of our openings for as we iron it. So let's pull this out. There we go. All right, so we've got that. Now, let's go ahead and pull this completely out. We're going to take this, tuck this in, and pin it. So we're doing this for all 5 of our openings. Remember, there's 2 on top, 2 on the sides for the side ties, and then 1 on the bottom for the large hole for turning it inside out. All right, and then there's our large hole. So we're going to tuck this in to make sure that everything looks nice. There we are. I think I tucked it in too much because it looked like a big old dip there. Let's pull. This is an art. Folding it. There we are. Now, for me, it still looks like it's a little bit of a dip, but that's okay. I don't mind too much. So for this one, it's going to need more than 1 pin. So I'm going to put a couple of pins in here. And then at this point, you're going to iron this all the way around. So don't just iron these openings. You want to iron every single seam of this apron. Let it lie down nice and flat. And so I'm going to iron mine and come back and show it to you. Okay, everything is ironed. Now, as you see, I still have my holes in each of the areas. So I haven't sewn any of this closed. I still have my hole. However, the fabric is tucked in there, so it looks nice and finished. So at this point, we're going to make our tubes for our top strap and our 2 side straps. Get them in there, iron them, get them in there and sew them, and then we will talk about pockets. All right, so let's go ahead and do these. So the first ones I'm going to do are the 2 side straps. So the 2 side straps for your waist. Again, all these measurements are down below for the sizes that you're cutting things. I need two strips that are 3 inches by 34 inches. So I have 3 sets of scraps right now. I have my side that we cut out for our little yeah, right there, for the shape of the apron, so I'm not going to use that one. And then we have our strips from the end whenever we cut the length. And then we have our strips for whenever we cut the width. So this is the most recent strip one. So this is the one that is not salvage to salvage. The salvage is actually located on the bottom of the strips. I'm going to use these for both my top strap and my side straps. So for my side straps, I want to use this. Now, of course, this is your apron. You can use whichever fabric you like at this point. All you need is 2 side straps that are, that are 34 inches each, and 1 top strap that is 21.5 inches. Now, all 3 straps should be 3 inches wide. All right, so in this case, this is 2 pieces of fabric that I am cutting. So this is 2 pieces of fabric. So let's go ahead and fold this over. And let's see, do I have to fold it one more time? Yes. Let's fold this over one more time. And I'm cutting this 3 inches. So I only need 1 cut of 3 inches. So let's go ahead, because I'm cutting 2, right? So there is 3 inches. Now, from here, I said the 2 side straps need to be 34 inches long. Okay? So, these 2 are folded in half. So, at this point, they just need to be 17. Uh-oh. I made a mistake. Well, crap. These are only 29 inches. Well, you know what? I guess this one is going to be my top. So there you go, because it can't be 34 inches. So this is going to, so I set the one aside, and this is going to be my top. So let's do the top fabric as 21.5 inches. There we are. Let me get my straight edge. Because when that happens, you know what? You just keep on going. You just keep on going, right? Keep on doing it. All right, so we've got that one. Now, this is going to be a scrap. So this is now going to be my top fabric for the what's going to go around your neck. Let's call this the neck fabric from now on. Okay, so set that aside. So now I need my side waist straps. Okay, now this is the same thing. So I'm going to take this and set this aside. So let's go back to my salvage to salvage fabric, because I know this fabric is 42 inches wide. Okay, so I'm going to use let's use this fabric, because I use this for my neck fabric. Let's use this one for the side fabrics. So I need 34 inches. Okay, so let's cut 2 strips. Now, remember in the beginning I said if you cut this correctly, it should be at least 6.5 inches wide, which is fine. Or 6.5 to 7 inches. So you should be able to get 2 3-inch wide strips out of it. Alright, so there is our trash. There is our trash. Now, this is a 34 inches. I'm sorry, 30. Yes, 34 inches. So you can do it two ways. You can take your fabric and you can open it up and measure 34 inches on here, or you can keep your fold there and measure 17 inches. And that's what I was actually getting ready to do when I discovered that the other one wasn't even 34 inches long. So 17 inches. So there's my one waist strap, and that's good for a scrap project over there. And then here is, let's line this up along the 0. Here is my other. Perfect. There we go. Okay, so with the neck strap, so now it's tube time. If you've never made a tube before, I do have a video on all about how to make and turn tubes. Take a look at it. I am going to be using my easy point and turner for turning my tubes. So at this point, you need tubes. Now, with your neck one, you do not need to worry about open edges. You can just leave this alone. So you can go ahead and just sew this tube and flip it and turn it around to the other side. Now, for your waist ones, you do need to have one finished edge here. So at this point, what you need to do is take one of your edges, fold them over for both of your waist straps, sew along these two edges, and then I'll come back and I'll show you that. And we're sewing along our edges because this is going to be open. So as this is our side strap, we're going to have this be an open seam. And because it's open, you want to make sure that this is done. Now, if you have a serger or other machine, you can serge this. You can just finish this off. It's fine just to fold it over and sew it. It's not going to go anywhere or do anything. So now let's make our tubes. Now, again, this is the waist strap, so it's only the one side. The other is going to be tucked into your apron. So at this point, we're going to take all three of these straps and we're going to fold them over. I'm going to sew them with a 1/4 inch seam all the way around, and then we're going to flip them. Remember, my preferred method is the easy point and turn, which of course is linked down below. If you don't have it or you need another way to flip your tubes, like I said, I've got a video on how to make and turn tubes that shows you all the different ways that you can do it. So we're going to sew these 3 tubes, and then I'm going to come back. I'm going to have them flipped, and I'll show you how to put them into your apron. I was getting ahead of myself. I am not ready to show you how to put those straps into the apron. I figured while I talk, I will flip my last tube using my easy point and turner. So the 2 other things these are not ready to be put in. So you still have to iron them. You still have to, oops, I did it the wrong way. Yep. There we are. Let's flip it the other way. I hate it whenever I flip it the wrong way, so I can't get those tubes turned nicely. And there. Great. Oh, there it is. So it is after you flip your tubes, you still need to iron them and secure them. So with these tubes, you don't want to have a big old mess of any which way. You want them nice and stable. So you want to make sure that you sew down. So how we're going to do that. First off, these are my 2 waist ones. So these are the larger ones versus the smaller neck one. The first thing you want to do is this side that has the folded in and ironed, folded in and sewn. What you want to do is pinch this closed, and we want to sew this. So we want to start from the end. We want to do a back stitch, go forward, do a back stitch, and finish. So you want to do that first on these 2. Then you want to iron each of these 3 perfectly flat. So iron each of them perfectly flat. Remember, this one is still open on both ends. And the waist ones is still open on the one end. You don't need to worry about that. So iron all 3 flat. Then you want to secure it. How you secure it is you want to sew it down 3 times. The first time, 1/8 of an inch from the left. The second time, 1/8 of an inch from the right. And then the third time, right down in the middle. So I'm going to iron all these. I'm going to sew these closed here. And then I'm going to make those 3 lines down the center of all 3 of these. Come back, show you what that looks like. And then I will put them into the apron and show you how to assemble it. Now I've used black thread to show you what I mean about the 3 lines down. So you want to, of course, seal off the end so it's no longer open, and then run 3 stitches, 1/8 of an inch on the left, 1/8 of an inch on the right, and then 1 down the center, just like that. Now, whenever I iron my straps, I try to iron it like this, that way it's easier for me to open this up as I'm ironing it, and you're not trapping your seam closed, and it'll be a lot better. All right, so let's add our straps into our apron. So we want to do, and this is our shorter piece that goes into the top, you want to open up your hole right there that you have, take the strap, insert it into the hole, so it's about 1/2 of an inch inside. Okay, and once you do that, go ahead and clip or pin it so that as you are sewing, it's going to stay closed. Take the other side, and I always like to make sure that the apron can sit like this, so it would be just like that. So I'm going to take this, oops, I'm sorry, you couldn't see what I just did. So as your apron sits, you actually want it to sit like this onto your neck. So that is how you're going to then put it in. So take this side, tuck that in, so it's in about 1/2 of an inch, out a little bit more, and then we're going to pin this closed, just like this. Now, after we add in all of the straps, either for the top or the sides, we're going to top stitch. Top stitching is exactly what we did on the straps right here. You're going to go 1/8 of an inch from the end. Top stitching is important because it's going to keep this closed so you can wash it, and it's not going to lose its shape or its form. It also looks nice and pretty because it's finished, but that's the main reason for it, so it doesn't lose its shape or form. So keep that in mind. You're going to be top stitching this all the way around 1/8 of an inch. So just like I did before, I'm having my arrows point that way. So I'm going to be top stitching down this way. So then I want my arrow to point this way for this strap. So let's take our straps for our sides. I want to make sure that my end that's closed is on the way out here. And I want to take this and I want to put this in here about 1/2 of an inch. There we go, 1/2 of an inch. And then, oh, you know what? I'm going to flip it the other way because I can see the seam on that side. I don't want to see the seam from the tube. There we go. So about 1/2 of an inch that way. And then pin that. So I can do that. And then I always like to run it just to make sure that everything is good. And I've already pinned this down here. So this here is my 5-inch opening that I ironed. Whenever I ironed this, I didn't want to lose this form. So I actually took the pins out to iron, put the pins back in. So the pins are still there. If your pins are not there, make sure you pin your bottom closed because we do need to top stitch this. And let's come around here, still pointing that way, and here's the other side. So where is my seam? Is on that side. So I'm going to have this be the open side. There we are. And there. Now, honestly, it doesn't make a difference if your apron is reversible. If you do the, which side you can see it, because you're really not going to pay attention to that anyways, because it's the whole point of the straps is to hold it around your waist. And that is it. So now at this point, I'm going to take this apron to my sewing machine and I'm going to top stitch this all the way around 1/8 of an inch, come back, show it to you, and we will work on pockets. And we have an apron. If this is all you need, if you don't need pockets on your apron, you're good to go and you're finished. And this is what I mean about the top stitching. So it goes all the way around, and I did it in black so you can see it. You can blend it into your fabrics. You can have it shown just like with those straps. It's up to you. Now, whenever you are top stitching along these edges, you notice how I really reinforced it. So you want to go forward, go back stitches, and then go forward again. So with all of my entry points for the tubes, I make sure to do that, where I did the extra stitching. So let's do pockets. If you decide that yes, you do want pockets, there are two ways that you can do this. You could add on pockets into this quilt now, before you flip this inside out, or you can do it afterwards. If you add in pockets afterwards, the only difference is you can see your stitches. Now in this case, for the pretzel pocket, I used black thread, so you can see it on the front, but you can't really see the stitching on the back unless you really, really look. So if you do your pockets after, which is what I'm doing right now, that's all you're going to be able to do is see those, see the stitches on the other side. Unless, of course, if you treat your apron like a true reversible and line up the pockets on both sides. So that's what I'm going to show you. You can have as many pockets as you want. You can fill your entire apron as pockets. It's whatever you want to do. In this case, I am going to put a single pocket right here, and I'm going to put it on the same in the front and the back. That way this would be a true reversible apron. So we can do a couple of choices you have now from your scrap fabrics. I can take this scrap fabric. Ooh, wouldn't that be cool to have like a circular pocket? I may think about that one. You can also, you still have these fabrics over here. You can take some of that. You know what? I may do that. I may have a pocket like this and do the same for both sides. Yep, I'm going to do that one. So I'm going to have a single pocket right in the middle about, now remember, 1/4 inch seam allowance on both sides, so you bring that in and it's going to be right there. Just enough for me to stick something right there if I'm gardening or cooking or gaming or whatever I want to be doing, right? Or if I'm wearing this, if I'm doing a show, if I want to put my pencils or pens in there, your money pockets, whatever you need. So that's what I'm going to do. So I need 2 pockets. I need one for the front and then one for the back. So it is a true reversible apron. There's 2 ways to make pockets. You can do a single fabric pocket. If you do a single fabric pocket, what you need to do is iron each of these sides in here and then sew it down all the way. Iron all 4 sides in. So you're going to take all 4 sides of your fabric, iron it in, sew it around, and then take your pocket, put it there, and then sew it down all 3 sides here. That is one option. That's a little bit complicated. I don't like all the ironing and sewing. The easiest way is to just do 2 fabrics and have it double-sided. So that's what we're going to show you. Okay, I said I wanted to use this. This is a little bit more than 6.5 inches wide. So what I want to do first is decide how deep do I want my pocket. So I'm thinking I want my pocket about, you know what, let's do 8 inches deep. So if I do 8 inches deep, then I want to make it 8.5 inches because 1/4 inch on each side for the seam allowance. So there's my one pocket. So it's 8.5 inches deep by 6.5 inches wide. So let's see, let me bring this over here. 6, perfect. So there's one pocket down, and let's put that aside. And then for my other pocket, so I said 6.5 by 8.5. So let's cut our 8.5. I think this is at least 6.5. Yep, fantastic. Okay, so let's cut at least our 8.5. There's my 8.5. And then my 6.5. Notice how I'm cutting 2 fabrics at the same time. This ensures that my fabrics are going to be the same size as I'm sewing it and combining it. Okay, so we've got those there. Let's make sure I didn't get any selvages on both sides. Nope. All right, now let's sew it. So I want to take this and I want to flip this right side to right side for each of my pockets. Oops, I almost did wrong side to right side. All right, so right side to right side. Now, we're going to use the turning that we just did for the apron and for the tubes and for everything else. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start sewing about 1 inch from this end, and I'm going to sew all the way around here come back, making sure we reinforce back and forth right there on both of these. We'll come back, and then I will show you again the flip and iron and all of the lovely stuff. Now this should start to feel familiar. So we are opening our pocket, we are flipping it inside out. See what I mean? Doesn't this feel familiar? If you've reinforced these edges, then you don't have to worry about those seams popping. Pop those corners out. If you need, you can use an additional tool to help to get these corners popped out all the way. And then after you get everything popped out, then of course you are ironing it. So ironing everything in place. Don't forget at the very top of your pocket, folding this fabric in here, holding it in place, and then putting pins in it to make sure it doesn't come undone before you iron it. So do this to both pockets. Now, you do not need to top stitch this. So all we're going to do at this point, after we flip it and pop the corners out, we're going to iron it, and then I'll show you how we attach it to the apron. This is it. This is the last step. All right, so take your pockets, no matter how many pockets you have, wherever you want to put them, the side that has the opening on it, that's going to go on the bottom. So I think I'm going to put my pocket, let's see, let's put my pocket right there. So my opening is on the bottom of my apron, and I'm going to sew this way. So let's go this way with it. There we are. And there. So let's get this onto here. Now, whenever you sew this pocket, remember you want the top to be open. So do not sew the top down. Only sew around here. And that's why you don't need to top stitch or worry about closing this bottom, because this is the step that you're going to do it. Now remember, it's always easier to put your pins in the direction that you are sewing. Here we are. And nice. Now, so how do we add the other pocket in? You can do one of two things. You can sew this in right now, which is the easier way. Flip it, find where the lines are, take your second one and put it down where those lines are, and then sew a second time. In that case, on one side you'll see two sets of lines. Or the prettier, more complicated way is just put it down right now. So let's go ahead. I'm feeling to make sure this is all lined up. Is my opening in the bottom? No. See, it's a good thing I checked that. My opening was in the top. So, because we have to have this opening in the bottom or else you're going to have problems. So make sure that's in the top. And it's the same size, so it should be fine. So now I'm going to pin this side, and as I pin it, I'm going to look to see, oh look, I did get that other side. So let's make sure this is all lined up, and let's pin all the way down, and let's do this. It's easier sometimes if you lift this up to pin. There we are, because it is going through so many layers now at this point. Whoops. And you don't want to hit the pin on the other side. There we are. Now, this is only for reversible aprons. If you want your pockets on the same exact area on each side of your reversible apron. If you're only putting pockets on one side, or you don't care if your pockets line up, don't have to worry about this step. You only have to worry about getting those pockets in place and then sewing the three sides, and that's it. So now let's make sure that we got everything on the other side. So I'm going to flip this over, and I'm going to take all of my pins out. And then after I take my pins out, Come on. Come on out, pin. There we are. Make sure that everything is still pinned. And it is. So as I sew it, it's going to be covered on the entire thing. And it looks like it's fine for both. One last check to make sure that my opening is in the bottom on each of these sides. It is. So now I'm going to go ahead on this side. Now, for this side right here, because I've got to take my pins out. On this side right here, I'm going to sew around there. And I will show you the big reveal. So, big reveal. Guess what Toni did? Toni sewed the side to the pocket. So, yeah, I have to undo these stitches here to free this, to redo it. I just thought it was funny, and I had to share it with you. Just to show that, yeah, everyone makes mistakes, and it happens. So, let's take care of this, and I'll come back and show you the actual reveal. All right, you ready for it? I have an apron. Look, it's an apron with paw prints and a big pocket right in the middle. And then it's reversible with a big pocket right in the middle. Look, and my straps are free. So, moment of truth. Does it fit? Oh, yeah, look at that. So that is great. Now, I am super short, so I think the next time I make an apron for myself, I will probably shorten this up. As you saw with the pretzel apron, I actually had this tied a bit right back there to keep it up. But again, remember, I'm only 5'2", so I'm a little small thing. And then, of course, it is tied in the back. So, yay! Oh, and I almost forgot. Don't forget to reinforce these edges right here as you're sewing your pocket in there, because you want to make sure that it stays. So, hopefully you learned something today. How to make an apron. And of course, all of the reasons why and everything else. So hopefully now you can not only make an apron for yourself, but you can adapt it and change it and make any kind of apron that you want, hopefully. Thank you so much for watching. If you decide to make some aprons, show me. I want to see them. Put them in the Quite Nerdy Quilters Facebook group. So we have the Facebook group. Don't forget to follow my Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and don't forget about, Pinterest, and don't forget about Twitch, where I sew live and you can interact and ask me questions.